There is a disengagement crisis. Gen Z quiet quit as early as month 6 or 8 sometimes. They are called the snowflake generation because just like snowflakes, when the first difficulty or challenge arises, they melt and they collapse. They don't have resilience and capacity for dealing with difficulty. Most of the business leaders I speak to are highly concerned because they don't know how Gen Z will cope with the AI revolution, because the AI revolution requires more than enthusiasm and nice TikTok videos. It requires critical thinking. Now, if you think that that's a Gen Z problem, this is a very ignorant approach. In this video, I would like to challenge all that you know about engagement and Gen Z. And I would like to show you why the Gen Z problem is not a Gen Z problem. It is a systemic problem of two systems, the education system and the corporate work system. So stay with me and I would like to show you how the Gen Z problem is not a Gen Z problem, but also provide meaningful solutions which are innovative, have a system thinking approach, not just a random quick fix approach to certain problems, and would probably help you do much better in engaging and preparing your Gen Zs to be superstars at work. Because this is not a problem of the generation, and actually the gifts that they carry are much larger than their challenges. However, we are so focused on the challenges and the shortcomings that we fail to see the gifts. Not only this, but we're probably less empathetic than ever when it comes to people who were simply born and raised in a world which is like nothing we've experienced before, and we're not only not prepared for this world, but we're also probably systemically disengaged from it. I want you to stay with me and I want you to put your empathetic glasses, because we are going to do something revolutionary. We are going to have a systemic approach to the topic of engagement and Gen Z. In this video, I will walk you through the findings from my master thesis, in which I explored onboarding, structured learning, and mentorship, and their effects on engagement for young hires. What you will see is truly revolutionary, because you will see that most of the interventions that you think of are either ineffective, counterproductive, or don't work the way you think they work. So stay with me, and in this video, I will walk you through onboarding, structured learning, and mentorship, where these fail, where are the blind spots, and how you can use them properly in your organization. And by the end of the video, I will provide you with an innovative, creative, system thinking approach to combining onboarding, structured learning, and mentorship into an entire process which will help your young hires be more engaged, more productive, and happier at work. So, buckle up. But before we dive into the slides, into the data, into the specific interventions, and how you can design truly meaningful interventions, I want us to do an empathetic journey. And the reason why I want us to do this is because I believe blind spots come not so much from lack of intellectual knowing, but from lack of deep, visceral, embodied understanding. So I would like to take you on a very short journey through the life of a Gen Z. So this is a generation which was born with devices. We know nothing about this. We have not had tens, hundreds, or thousands of previous generations who were born with device. So there is not much data of what happens to the brain with those devices. What we know though is that the greatest weapon we have to succeed is our attention. And attention is disrupted by devices, by being bombarded with information, and by social media. And this is exactly what the young Gen Z is experiencing. Now you may think, oh, but they lack discipline. Trust me, you lack discipline even more than them. Because before your prefrontal cortex has been developed, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for self-control and for goal-directed behavior, you are handed a device and you're bombarded with information. And your dopamine baseline, the baseline of dopamine, and we know that dopamine is the molecule of reward, is disrupted. You expect instant gratification, instant result, instant feedback, instant information. Not because you're born flawed, not because you're lazier than previous generation, but because you are born in a world where your attention is being hijacked and kidnapped, and no one is really teaching you how to regain your attention back. You study in an education system which is aligned with the industrial era. Your parents studied in the same education system, but frankly, they were closer to the industrial era and they lived in a completely different world. Not only you study in an educational system which is completely irrelevant to your life, to modern life, and to anything that's happening in the world, but you see a world which is falling apart. In your lifetime, you have probably not had experienced a public figure who has true values. Martin Luther King did not live in your age, Nelson Mandela either, and none of the great leaders lived in your age. What you're constantly seeing is leaders who start war, leaders who are literally stupid, and you see the world around you falling apart. You see a pandemic and no one knows what to do, and on top of that, you stay at home. And not only that you're constantly using devices, but now you also need to use devices to study, and there is no other way for you to study. This is only part of the picture. So what I'm trying to say is that this is a generation which was born in an unprecedented time of disruption of human experience, of attention, of emotion, and crisis, of values. And while they were born in that unprecedented time of disruption, the educational system not only did not catch up, but stayed behind. Now, we have an existential question. I would say almost a Shakespeare existential type of question. We could say, when Gen Z walk through the door of my organization, it's their problem if they know how to manage their attention, if they are resilient, and if they have critical thinking. This is not my problem. This is the problem of the education system and their families. This, ladies and gentlemen, it's 1990s thinking. This is so old-fashioned and not trendy. Because we no longer live in a world where everything is boxed. We live in a world where we need to have a system approach to life. So when Gen Z walk through the door, you are presented with an existential question. Lack of engagement and productivity is their problem, or lack of engagement and productivity is something that I can contribute to improving. And the organizations who will have highest rating of engagement and productivity will be those who embrace the fact that through their door is walking a generation that needs a completely different work structure, onboarding, structured learning, and mentorship. They will design it for their needs and succeed. So now I'm going to walk you through the slides of what I found in my master thesis in speaking to over 48 Gen Zs, interviewing HRs and mentors. And at each step, I will suggest practical interventions so that you become that kind of organization which is truly engaging Gen Z. But before I do so, there is one last thing which I would like to point out. The work environment was never designed for productivity. It was never designed for engagement. It was designed for a tunnel vision, route working, and pretty much clicking a button. This is no longer necessary. Now we need creativity, we need innovation, we need resilience. So I would argue that what I'm about to offer to you is to reimagine workplace, reimagine your office space, reimagine the food that you have in your office, reimagine practices at work that will actually lead to better engagement, not just for Gen Z. Stay tuned. Oh, and by the way, grab a pen on paper, and I would like to hear in the comments which is the intervention that you liked the most. Now, let's get to it. In my master thesis, I studied the effect of structured learning, onboarding, and mentorship on early engagement in the first 26 months of career tenure of Gen Z. If you're interested to read the whole study, you will find my contact details at the end of this video. But now let's dive into it and see how and why Gen Z problem is not actually a Gen Z problem. Let me begin with the insight before the insight. In my attempt to gather responses for Gen Z, aiming at 120 responses, I decided to offer prizes. I offered 3 prizes: 2 free career guidance sessions, not sessions but programs, and 1 trip to Milan when the Gen Z would present an idea of theirs and could meet possible investors. Even with those quite nice prizes, it was very difficult to get responses, and I only got 48 replies to my survey, which led me to the conclusion that sustained effort is almost a foreign experience to this generation. They are looking for instant gratification at a level which is almost incomprehensible for older generations. And even when there is a prize, if the prize is not immediate, right after I do the thing, I get the prize, it's very difficult to get them motivated. Which leads to another quite interesting question, the question of human-centered organizations. About human-centered organizations, we finally come to the insight that bottom line is driven by humans. Even with AI and automation, human leadership and human decisions are what drives bottom line or money. So why not flourish and nourish the humans who drive the results? What is a human-centered organization? In my research, I interviewed HRs, and interestingly, a lot of them shared that they are doing things to make the work of Gen Z easier. When it comes to learning for Gen Z, a lot of HRs and organizations are looking at bite-sizing everything. Some of them are even looking at lowering the bar. So not having the young people complete the entire course or the entire learning program, but maybe just part of it. They're trying to gamify the workplace by the engagement and ultimately protect Gen Z from difficulty. However, this is how we adjust to dysfunction. A dysfunction which was not innate. It's not a dysfunction Gen Z is born with. It's a dysfunction coming from a very dysfunctional educational system. But we have another approach, and that approach is to align our organization, to center it around human flourishing, which means that we are going to design learning that builds capacity. We will raise the standard with support. So raising the standard for the Gen Z, but also supporting them to meet the standard. We will create real meaning and earn genuine commitment. We can design the workplace, the work practices, the rewards around human flourishing. And if you want to do that, we can do it together in a strategy session in which we can design things you will actually implement in your organization to center it around human flourishing. Logically, everyone is asking, how do we build flourishing, especially for younger generations? And it's actually not so difficult once we are committed to it. First of all, we need to tap into personal meaning and purpose. Our career profile is malleable. When we get the sustained motivation of the person, their innate abilities, their values, and their working styles, we can align them with the role. So the career profile Catapult is providing, it's not something that says, you are this and only this. It's saying, this is your potential, this is your role, let's see how we align them. We also need to build flourishing around consistency. So every practice we have in our organization, even if it's imperfect, should stay long enough with us. We need scaffolding. I understand that some leaders, especially in older generations, want to throw Gen Z in the deep, but they come unprepared from the educational system. So we really need that support for them. And habit formation. In my master thesis research, I found out that almost 90% of the structured learning is in organizations is heavily content based, but our learning for Gen Z is habit based. A little content, a lot of building behaviors versus a lot of content and no building behaviors. And finally, we need a system of meaningful rewards. Something that we need to understand about Gen Z is that a lot of them come with dysregulated dopamine due to social media devices and instant gratification. So when we design reward systems, we need to make sure that those rewards are earned through effort, through meaningful but also doable effort. A reward that becomes predictable stops being a reward. One of the most interesting findings in my study was that the first 24 months of the career of a Gen Z are very, very important. They are actually crucial. From month 1 to 3, we have the activist, high energy, ready to prove themselves. Months 3 to 6, we have the participants, peak engagement, and this is your window to intervene. Month 6 through 7, they become bystander. By month 6, 7, they are already feeling the difficulty, the heaviness, the responsibility, everything that life has not prepared them for. Month 7 through 8, we start seeing the quiet quitting, minimal effort, still showing up, no enthusiasm, no proactivity. Month 9 plus, isolate. They are already looking for the exit. By the time disengagement is visible, the window for intervention has already closed. What does this mean for you as an HR, as a team leader, or someone working with Gen Z? In a workplace, regardless of whether it's their first, their second, or their third workplace, your onboarding efforts should not stop at month 3. Actually, your most strategic efforts for engagement and even onboarding should happen in months 3 to 6. This is where you provide mentorship. This is where you provide learning for habit formation, not just content. This is where you provide constant feedback. And this is where you open the space for genuine conversation of what is going okay, what is not going okay, and how it can go better. Okay, so what do we do months 3 to 6, not month 9? We have strategic onboarding in month 1. Close the expectation gap before it opens. Be very transparent about possible challenges and workshop or teach for dealing with those specific challenges. Month 2, structured learning. Build the capacity to perform and stay. Not learning that is only content heavy, but learning that helps build behaviors and habits. By month 3, you need to have formal mentorship to sustain the relationship that holds everything else. Now to my findings. My first finding was regarding onboarding. Onboarding of Gen Z. The first 90 days of a Gen Z in a new workplace are everything, and most organizations are wasting them. I tested 3 interventions. Onboarding was the only one that predicted engagement. It wasn't training, it wasn't mentorship, it wasn't learning programs. So obviously, relationship and mentorship are crucial in the early days of a Gen Z workplace. Most new hires feel welcome and almost none feel prepared to perform. So what onboarding does is it helps them both feel welcome and perform. The 3 things that you can do regarding onboarding is schedule the conversation you skip. Meet your most recent hire and ask them what is that they expected to find in this job and where is the mismatch. Extend your onboarding timeline if it ended before month 3. Actually, what you can do is you can have onboarding in week 1, then have some space onboarding in month 2, have some space and onboarding in month 3. Stop thinking of onboarding of something that happens just at the very beginning of someone's career. Close the expectation gap explicitly. Don't assume that your Gen Zs and your new hires know what success in your organization looks like or how challenges looks like. Get them in a room for 1 hour and workshop that. Talk about how success looks like, talk about the challenges, have an open conversation, have some games around them, and make sure that they feel prepared of what's coming ahead. The second finding was structured learning. Your learning programs exist. Actually, everyone's learning program exists. But are they delivering the right thing? Structured learning program predicted zero additional engagement. The learning on offer doesn't match what Gen Z need in the first 2 years of their career. Organizations invest in technical training while Gen Z is struggling with self regulation, stress management, and professional communication. So, when you choose your structured learning offering, make sure that you include life skills and soft skills, and make sure that it's not only content, but also structure for building new behaviors. What are some things that you can do for structured learning this Monday? You can audit your content balance. What percentage of your learning programs addresses soft skills? If the answer is under 30%, maybe you need to rebalance. Rethink the format. Sometimes we go directly into learning mode and we forget all the possible things that could go wrong. So start with a mindset and capacity session, which means starts with explicitly naming and transforming the barriers to learning, building skills to learn and building skills to transform learning into actual behavior. Then include a challenge. So without an epic meaning, each learning is just another boring thing. So put there the learning goal, the challenge. How does this learning program make me a better professional, a better person? What can I gain at the end? And finally, ensure that once the learning has happened, there is a habit formation follow up. This is exactly the way we have structured the Catapult Your Career learning programs, and you can implement them in your organization so that your Gen Z actually learn and apply. Finally, connect the learning to progression. Every learning module should answer one question for every employee. How does this help me grow here? And if this is not explicit and clear, you're probably disengaging learners from the learning. The third finding was regarding mentorship, the most powerful resource and apparently the most absent one. Mentorship showed a meaningful relationship to engagement. However, zero formal mentorship programs within the workplace were reported by the Gen Zs that I interviewed. They described no designated mentor, no structured guidance. Also, a lot of them were part of programs like Able Mentor, Mentor the Young, and some of their mentors were great, others not so much. So, honestly, a lot of them need mentorship, but at the workplace, they feel that they're managed, not mentored. Three things you can do about mentorship this Monday. Name someone. Assign one person to each new hire whose job is development, not performance management, not their direct manager. Someone safe to ask the uncomfortable questions. Give mentorship a structure. A coffee once a month is not mentorship. Bi-weekly contact, clear goal, simple check-in format, even something written that stays. Train your mentors. Effective mentorship is a skill. A lot of adults are great professionals, but they're poor mentors. And if you train your adults to be good mentors, probably they will become better managers and better leaders. We need to understand something very important. The gap between what Gen Z is expecting, capable of, and prepared for, and what the workforce requires starts before day one. The research kept pointing out the same question: what the problem isn't just Gen Z, but it's how they arrive at the door. 58 of employees are Gen Z and they are not work ready. Our data shows they struggle with self regulation, they struggle with stress management and professional communication before onboarding even begins. You can design the perfect first 90 days, but you cannot onboard capacity that was never built. So, when we speak about Gen Z, we need to understand that it is necessary to build capacity. You can say that this is not your job, and you will be right. But also, if you train for capacity, your Gen Zs will do their job better. This is where Catapult Your Career comes in, a career readiness platform that builds the human capacity for your onboarding to land. For Gen Z, we have career profiling, power skills development, mindset, and resilient training. Not only content training, but behavior change training. For HRs, we have behavior-based candidates insights, skill badges beyond the CV, and work readiness signals before the interview. So if you are an HR, you can log into our platform and see what is the career profile of certain candidate, how many trainings they've done before they come to your organizations, and what badges have they achieved for building behaviors in those trainings. Catapult Your Career is not a recruitment tool. It's a readiness tool so that the talent you hire is actually ready to engage. As I mentioned, if you want to read my entire study, you can email me and I will send it to you. If you feel that onboarding, engagement, and preparing Gen Z is something that is at the table for you, you can also contact me and we can see how can we design onboarding, structured learning, and mentorship as an entire process which helps you engage your Gen Zs.